How do some salespeople get so much done in the same 24 hours that you have? Well, it all boils down to one skill, $1 million skill. And without it, you're not just risking deals, you're risking your entire career. But mastering it, it's gonna put you on the fast track to success and exponentially grow your income. And today, I'm gonna show you what it is, I'm gonna show you how it works, and how I use it to more than 4x my productivity. And that skill, by the way, is time management. And what we're gonna do in this video is teach you a proven framework that's gonna help you get twice the amount of work done in half the amount of time. I know that's a very big claim, but what if I told you that a majority of the people in your company, they're already using this framework? In fact, all the big companies in the world are using it. Google, Microsoft, Apple, Salesforce. So then the question is, why are they keeping it a secret from us? Well, it's called Agile method. The problem with it is it wasn't made for salespeople. It was made for developers and project teams. And what's problematic about it is it requires so much administrative work. And you already got enough admin work on your plate. You gotta log notes in CRM, you gotta send out emails, you gotta put together quotes. I'm not trying to make your life more difficult. We're trying to make more time out of your day. But here's what we did, is we stripped away all the administrative burden of Agile method. We extracted the core concepts and we created a time management system specifically built for salespeople. And this system is gonna allow you to get twice the amount of work done in half the amount of time. And I'm gonna show you how. But the first thing you need to understand is, why don't things get done? Well, oftentimes it's because we don't have a big enough reason why. And I remember early in my career, I had this boss, and he had this crazy idea that we had to make 100 calls a day. And bear in mind, I wasn't an SDR, I was an account executive. And regardless if I had 8 discovery calls, an RFP, and a quote to put together that day, he didn't care. He still wanted me to make 100 calls. But here's the problem, as I think he forgot why I was making the calls. The whole point was to generate opportunities so that I could close business. But if I'm over here working opportunities trying to close business, making 100 calls doesn't make sense. That's not my top priority. So what did I do? Well, we had an auto dialer back then. And what I used to do was log in, put my phone on hold, and just click dial every few minutes. And I got my 100 calls per day. Meanwhile, I was on the other line talking to my actual customers. Now, I'm not saying you should cheat the system, because if I didn't have opportunities and I didn't have deals to work on, I should be making calls. I should be building up pipeline. However, I think my manager lost track of why I was making the calls in the first place. And this is what happens a lot of times when we have tasks to do, is we forget why we need to do them. And if they have no meaning behind them, chances are they're gonna fall by the wayside. But that's okay, because not everything is worth doing. In fact, I wasn't making calls so that I could build pipeline at that point. I was making calls to get my boss off my back. So it's not just important to decide what you will do, it's also equally important to decide what you won't do. And the way that you can vet out anything on your to-do list is to make sure that you always have a so that statement. For example, let's say you got to write an email to a customer. Your so that statement might say something like, I'm writing this email so that my customer has all the resources in one place to make their buying decision easier. That's a pretty strong so that statement. But a weak so that statement for the same scenario might say, I need to write an email to my customer so that my boss doesn't get on my back. That's not very strong. In fact, if that's the reason you're writing an email, chances are you're gonna do it half-ass, or you're not gonna do it at all. So it's all about having a purpose behind everything that you do. And sometimes what that's gonna mean is you need to take a moment and really think about, why am I doing this? And there's this concept, it's called slowing down to speed up. Now, I know this might seem completely counterintuitive, but stick with me on this one. When you think about Agile, what's the first animal that comes to mind? Well, it's probably a cheetah. the fastest land animal on Earth, running up to 80 miles per hour. But what if I told you that a cheetah, they actually spend 90% of their day at rest? That's right, just straight chilling like a villain. Well, you might be wondering, how are they an apex predator? It's because cheetahs don't waste motion. They make every single move count. They spend so much more time plotting their attack than just sprinting at their prey. And it's because they only have about 30 to 60 seconds of total stamina. And this isn't very different from us. Did you know that the average human, they can only focus on a task about 15 to 20 minutes at a time? In fact, they say that most people can only do deep work for about 4 hours a day. So just like the cheetah, we gotta make sure that we make every single movement count. And that's gonna require some forethought. So here's the first thing you need to do. When you come up with a task, write it down. You can write it on your phone, you can write it on a notebook, maybe a sticky note, it doesn't matter, but just write it. You can't just have a bunch of to-dos swirling around in your head. In fact, research has shown that people who write things down are 42% more likely to get things done. And if you want to separate yourself from the average salesperson, then you're going to have to slow down to speed up. Because the average salesperson, they suck at time management and they just run at things and they stay busy, but they're not really productive. Now, there's totally a possibility when you start writing down everything you need to do, it's gonna be overwhelming. And that actually brings us to our next tip here, which is chunking. So imagine this, your goal is to climb Mount Everest. Sounds a little bit overwhelming, right? But what if you only had to focus on reaching the next base camp? Instead of looking at that entire mountain and trying to tackle the whole thing all at once, you just break it down into smaller chunks. And that's exactly what you do with your bigger task. Because I'm sure some of you wrote down your to-do list and you saw a mountain of tasks, and that could be paralyzing. So here's what you do. Any task that's gonna take more than an hour, break it down into smaller chunks. And I recommend anything from 20 minutes to 60 minutes max. All right, so let's look at this in practice. Let's say you have a big formal proposal that you need to send to your largest client. Well, instead of just making that one big all-day task, let's break it down into smaller steps. The first thing you need to do is create a quote and get it approved through your RevOps team. Then next up would be to write your executive summary, and you wanna make sure that's high quality. And then draft your email up. And then lastly, proofread it. Check it against your managers, your peers, and then it might actually just feel like you climbed 4 very small hills, but the reality is you're gonna look up and you're at the top of the mountain. But here's the kicker. By focusing on just one task at a time in those little windows, you're not just gonna increase the likelihood of getting it done, but you're actually gonna get a better quality product because you're not all scatterbrained trying to do 5 things at once. Also, this is gonna hack the chemicals in your brain because every single time you complete a task, you actually release a little bit of dopamine. So why not have 4 dopamine releases instead of just 1? And by chunking, you're basically gamifying your task to trigger reward mechanisms more often. Think about it, this is exactly what video games do. They don't wait until the game is over to just acknowledge your score. They constantly give you feedback on how well you're doing. And it's because game companies have spent a lot of money to know how your dopamine triggers work. So why not use this hack to your advantage? And once you've broken down all your tasks into manageable chunks, it's gonna bring us to the next step, which is very critical, and that's prioritization. To quote Stephen Covey, the key is not to prioritize your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. Like we've said before, being busy does not equate to being productive. Think about a hamster on a wheel. They're running tirelessly, but they stay in the same place. It's active, it's moving, but there's no progress. This mirrors being caught in the cycle of tasks that don't lead to any significant advancement of our goals. And most people, they let the day dictate their plans. But successful people, they dictate their plans for the day. So stop being reactive with your time. Here's what you do. After you write down your entire to-do list and you chunk out your bigger task, ask yourself 2 questions. 1, how important is this task? And then 2, how urgent is this task? And then rate them both on a scale of 1 to 10. And then multiply those 2 scores by each other. And the higher the number, the higher the priority. And what you're gonna find is not everything that's urgent is important. In fact, you probably shouldn't be spending your time on anything that's not important. But you're also gonna find that not everything that's important is urgent. So this is about truly spending your time on what's gonna have the highest impact and also what needs to get done right away. Think about it this way. If you're always putting out fires, then you're not building an empire. You're just surviving another day. And prioritization, it's about choosing what builds your empire. It's about what moves you closer to your targets and what aligns with your so that statements. And here's where it gets real. Most tasks that seem urgent, they're not important in the long run. They're just distractions. But those important tasks, the ones that might not scream your attention today, those are the ones that are gonna grow your career and grow your paycheck. So schedule your priorities, not your schedule. And this means that you're not just filling your day with a bunch of tasks, but you're strategically placing them where they're gonna have the most impact. And this is how you turn from being a busy salesperson to a productive salesperson. Every yes to a task is a no to something else. So make sure every time you say yes, that it's worth it. And then once you figure out what your priorities are, it's time to tackle them in sprints. And this is where rubber meets the road. This is where it's time to get shit done and you channel your inner cheetah. It's time to attack your prey. And a sprint, it's not just about speed, but it's about focused, intense work. And here's how to make it work for you. You do something called time boxing. And this is where you set aside a very specific amount of time, maybe 25 minutes, 45 minutes, or even an hour. But the key is once you start, you're committed until the timer goes off. And then during this sprint, you're not working on a bunch of stuff at the same time. You're not getting distracted by social media. You're focused on one task and you're doing it with intensity. Because this isn't just about doing the task, it's about doing it with full engagement. So think about this like a high intensity workout, but for your brain. And then once you're done, relax. Take a little bit of time off. Stretch the old legs, get some water, and make sure you take a breath. Because this is gonna be super critical and it's gonna help you reset for your next sprint. And then you just rinse and repeat. And before you know it, you're gonna be the most productive salesperson at your company and you're not gonna have to work 16-hour days. So give it a shot. Write down your task, chunk them into small, bite-sized pieces, prioritize, and then execute on them in short sprints. And if you follow this method, you're not just gonna get more done, but you're gonna do it in a shorter period of time. And that right there is the $1 million skill that's gonna 4x your productivity. And if you wanna get more tips on time management, let us know down in the comments, because I've spent the last 3 years of my life working a full-time day job, running an entire company, and starting a YouTube channel. So I've had no other choice than to master the skill of time management, and I have countless tools and hacks that can help you become the most efficient salesperson. In fact, we're just scratching the surface. And as always, if you found this video valuable, you want to keep getting tips on how to smash your quota, make more money, and get promoted, then hit that like button, subscribe for more, and don't forget to share it with your friends. We'll see you in the next video.